Hello and welcome everyone. This is the fifth and final workshop in our weekly series this week. I hope that first of all, you've learned something useful and interesting in the other sessions, and then there's at least something left for me to cover that is new and interesting for you, but I'm sure there will be. In this session, we will talk about teaching in the age of AI, and we'll take a look at 7 tips that will prepare you for an educational evolution. In this session, we'll cover 7 tips and 21 different challenges or strategies for you to become an AI-ready language teacher. We'll look into things like how to choose your own AI adventure, how to become friends with AI, develop empathy for AI, use AI to cover all the different bases in your classroom, how to transform your teaching with AI, how to adopt AI-first pedagogy, and make the first step towards AI mastery. Well, a little bit about me. I call myself inside Pearson as an undercover teacher because my background is a language learner, language teacher. I joined Pearson as an instructional designer, trying to bring the creative things that I did as an ESL teacher to building new products. I guess I have a combination of skills that will help me give an interesting perspective on AI, which is a combination of pedagogy, technology, product management, and a sprinkle of crazy ideas. And if you wonder how or where I learned all of this, I usually give this meme to people is to showcase that English teachers are usually almost like superheroes. Like we have to know it all. We have to know technology, and we become experts of all the topics that we usually cover in all the units. So if you ever wonder how I know all of this, it's mostly from the classroom. So anyway, let's get straight into it. The first tip is how to choose your own AI adventure. When you look at people and their typical attitudes about AI, you could probably divide them into kind of like 2 extremes. On the one extreme, you have AI accelerationists. These are people thinking that AI is magical, omnipotent, mandatory, and we should just adopt it, glorify it, promote it every single day. On the other opposite end of the spectrum, we have AI Luddites, who are the extreme opposite. Basically, these are all the people who are saying AI is useless, scary, evil, we should ban it, ignore it, and vilify it every single moment. Then there are people in the middle, AI rationalists. And these are the people who say, well, you know what, I'm not on this extreme or the other. I'm just going to wait it out and see what happens and see where AI brings value. What I want to tell you is that being in the middle is not good, and being at the extremes is not good either. Because if you are in the middle, I believe this creates a lot of inertia where teachers or other people thinking about AI just simply wait and see and do nothing. And I don't think it's very valuable. I think a more productive way is to see where you want to choose to be. And I think the best place to be is either becoming an AI methodologist, where you practice based on theory, or you become an AI experimentalist, where you develop a theory based on your practice. In the first case, you learn so you can try different AI tools and see how your knowledge of AI can translate into practice. In the other case, you do the opposite. You try to use different tools and see how experimenting with AI helps you understand it better. So I guess as tip number 1 and challenge number 1 for you is try to decide which of these paths you will likely follow. Don't be at the extremes, don't be at the middle, but decide, are you more on the AI methodologist side or AI experimentalist side? So if you are on the side of learning AI before you can try it. So I think one thing that you should take away from this week and from this session in particular is that you can think about all AI applications as simply input-output machines. So input is something that you give to AI, and output is something that AI gives to you in return. So there are different types of AI. So there are predictive AI, basically that based on input X, it can tell you output Y, or generative AI, where based on your input, it can create something. So an example of predictive AI in language learning is, as input, you can give AI an essay written by a learner, and the output would be the score, let's say a GSE score of that learner. In generative AI case, you can give instructions for a 5-paragraph essay as input to AI, and the output will be the 5-paragraph essay as the output. So as your first challenge, learn the basics of different types of AI, how these models work and how they train, and you'll be on your way to becoming an AI-ready teacher. So if you adopt the second path, right? So you know what, let me try AI so I can learn it instead. So let me ask you a couple of questions, and maybe we can try to use chat if it works. So the Q&A section for these. So in your classroom, have you ever created your own warm-up activities to start a lesson? Have you ever created additional activities to supplement a textbook? Or have you ever looked for a YouTube video or a TED Talk to bring to your classroom? And have you ever created activities based on those videos? Have you ever looked for images to explain vocabulary that your students couldn't understand? Have you ever brought a podcast that you found online to use in your lesson? Or maybe you ever created a custom vocabulary or grammar games to review what you've learned all week? Or maybe you created activities based on news or recent events because you thought your students would enjoy those. Well, I see a lot of yeses in the chat, so I guess I'm on the right track. But the good news is that AI today can already help you with all of these tasks. You have tools today that can generate text. You have tools today that can help you create custom audio. You can have tools today that generate images for you. And there are AI tools today that generate video, right? So basically, this is exciting times to be a teacher, because now not only can you search for things for your classroom, but you can generate from scratch based on your specific specifications or criteria. So challenge number 2 for you is a bit more practical, right? So when you have time, try to find at least one tool for creating text, audio, images, and video, and then try to create at least one activity with that AI-generated tool. You will be super surprised how simple these tools actually are, and that it will not take you more than 15-20 minutes to create one asset of each of these types with AI today. I already see some questions in the chat about which tools. I'll probably wait until mentioning anything. The thing about AI space is that it's evolving so rapidly. So if I mention this a certain tool today, it might not exist tomorrow. So I just encourage you to continuously being up to date with all the latest tools, because all of the new ones appear every day, and they're better than the old ones, and the old ones go away. So again, it's something. It's a bit of a homework for you guys. So another one. So if you don't want to decide between, like, do I want to be a methodologist or an experimentalist, you can do both, right? You can be both. So you can become a principal practitioner by doing both, learning about AI and trying AI. If you want to learn about AI, you can learn about how text generation works, image, audio, video generation works, what is prompt engineering and how to be a good prompt engineer. And you can try all of these tools and different prompt engineering techniques to see how it works. So the third challenge for you is explain to a colleague who doesn't know anything about AI, especially generative AI, explain to them how it works, and then show them activities that you created with that specific tool. I think in their eyes, you will look like a superhero for sure. So second tip, become friends with AI. Some people think that they are the expert, they are the most creative person in the universe, and they know pedagogy better than anybody else. There are others that think AI is that. They think that AI knows better, AI is more creative, AI has better pedagogy. I don't think it should be seen in this way. I think it should be more summative. So I think a more proactive way to look at this is how AI and me can become a super version of me. So basically, tip number 2 is think about how AI can help you become a super you. For example, I know from experience that every teacher has something unique, some very quirky, special things about how they teach or manage their classroom. Maybe you use memes a lot, maybe you joke a lot, maybe you tell a lot of stories, maybe you find a lot of cool things. AI can help you do all of those things, but much faster and much better. So don't think about, am I better than AI, or is AI better than me? Think about that, well, with AI, I can be better than me. All right. So second point here. So treat AI as a thought partner. don't think that AI should tell you what to do, but you can ask AI to give you some ideas. So for example, if you're stuck and you're trying to figure out like, how can I create a nice icebreaker or a way to introduce this topic that is not boring so my students don't fall asleep, like people watching this webinar, for example. I hope not. Then AI can give you a bunch of ideas. And if you like any one of them, then you can ask AI to generate activities for that. You can ask, 100 different ways that you can create an icebreaker for a specific topic. So sometimes, I know a lot of teachers like to keep it fresh. So if you've been kind of tired of using the same exact ways to start the same unit with a new group of students, well, maybe AI could help you come up with some interesting ideas that you wouldn't think on your own. The good thing is you don't have to follow what AI tells you. You decide. If you don't like it, ask it for more. If you like it, ask it to generate one example. So again, treat it as a thought partner. So challenge for you to try, find one AI tool and see if you can create a warm-up activity or a revision game based on it, and then try it. See if it's any good. Another point is you can treat AI as a helpful teacher's assistant. When I was teaching, I did not have a teacher's assistant, so I had to do everything, including things that I didn't particularly enjoy, such as creating models of essays. I don't know if anybody ever taught academic English or how to write essays. The most difficult part for me was finding good examples of essays to show to students what a good essay looks like. And sometimes I had to write one myself. So AI could help you with all those things, right? So for example, here I'm describing the requirements for an essay as input, and then the output from AI are examples of essays that fulfill those requirements. So again, challenge for you here is treat AI as your personal teacher's assistant and ask it to create things for you that you don't have time or desire for, right? So basically, do the things that you love and let AI do the things that you don't particularly love, or the ones that will take you longer to create. I guess it's worth pointing out that you need to treat AI with a balance of trust and skepticism. And I'm sure this topic has come up this week about AI hallucinations. But just as a reminder, hallucinations is when an AI creates something like a text that sounds very confident, which in fact has a lot of things that look like facts, but in fact they're made up or completely wrong. And the more confident the text sounds, the more difficult it is to catch that this is a hallucination or not. So I guess, rules of thumb here, right? So what should you do? Well, first learn more about hallucinations, how to catch them, fact check information if it's important, use your own judgment, and most importantly, improve your own prompting skills. Most of the time, the bad output of a system is simply the result of bad input, right? So I don't know if you've seen this acronym before, but it basically stands for garbage in, garbage out. So the worse your prompt is, the worse the output is. So what you should not do, you should not trust everything AI says. You shouldn't paste everything it creates and present it as a fact. You shouldn't tell your students to use AI instead of doing research, for example. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. A lot of people try to use an AI system. It creates bad output because they had a bad input, and they blame the tool and say, you know what, AI doesn't work. I don't want to use it again, right? So don't use bad prompts. Don't give up after the first attempt. A good approach here is to iteratively discover what really works. Try, reflect, try again. So challenge for you here is find some online resources and practical ways to reduce hallucinations and see what tools can help you fact check so that outputs that you create are of high quality. So now we're moving into the next segment here. So develop empathy for AI. Empathy is an interesting concept. So I don't know if you guys read this book, Scary Smart. If you have, let us know in the chat. But Mo Godot basically wrote this book about AI, and a couple of interesting things that stuck with me there is that AI listens to us, right? So everything that AI learns, it learns by analyzing what people say. So if we want AI to be good, we have to be good, right? So if we online post all the things about AI will kill us all and dominate the world and take over our jobs. All these AI systems are analyzing this text. So guess what the AI system is biased to think, right? So empathy goes both ways, right? So typically we think of empathy as understanding feelings and problems of another. Another doesn't have to be a person. It could also be AI, right? And of course, we know about human-to-human empathy, where we understand the feelings of another person. Or we ask AI systems to have empathy for us, right? So, well, we need to make sure AI understands how people think. But nobody talks about how humans have to develop empathy for AI so that we understand how AI thinks, how it feels, why it thinks this way, and how the output it creates is exactly the way that it is. So reflection to you is, I'm sure you've had experience where you've used a product so long that you almost intuitively know what will happen if you click this button or that button, or if you type this thing, that thing will happen. So it's the same exact thing with AI. So when you get to that level of proficiency with AI tools, you will feel that you've developed almost like a sense of empathy for AI, and you will feel like, oh, I feel intuitively that if I do this, it will do that. So let's talk about more about how you can develop that feel for how AI thinks. So AI cannot read your mind. It can only read your instructions, or at least for now. So I don't know if you've seen this cartoon from the New Yorker. I first saw this cartoon in Steven Pinker's book, The Sense of Style, where Steven Pinker explained the concept of the curse of knowledge. So curse of knowledge is basically thinking that the explanation that you have in your head is as clear to another person as it is to you. But it isn't really. And why it's important for AI is because AI follows your instructions. So if you think your instructions are clear to you, but they're not clear to AI, guess what will happen? The output of AI will be very disappointing to you. A way to avoid this is to use prompt templates, such as this one, RTF, that a colleague of mine, Paul Signori, recommended as a very simple prompt to start. So what this is basically a framework for articulating instructions in such a way so that they result in AI understanding what you're trying AI to do, right? So here, as an example, I am describing the what I want from AI, and there are three aspects to it. So R stands for role. So what role do you want AI to play? T stands for task. So what task do you want AI to execute? And then format is, in which format do you want the AI to present the output? So if you give these three things, AI is more likely to give you the output that you want and not give you the output that you don't want, so you don't blame the AI, right? So here's an example of what came out based on my instructions, right? So I asked for a dialogue with specific things, with vocabulary in bold, and here we go. The output was exactly as I wanted. So the truth is, RTF is only one of these frameworks. I really encourage you to try them all, find them online. You can simply type prompt frameworks or prompt formulas, and you're going to see dozens and dozens and dozens of them. So find them, try them, see which one create better outputs. After you've tried dozens of them multiple times, you will create your own frameworks, and you can save one framework for grammar activities, one framework for icebreakers, one framework for essays, and so on. So again, give it a try. It's super cool. All right. So another one is treat AI as a capable student. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of the growth mindset. So growth mindset is what was first introduced by Carol Dweck in her work on, well, basically thinking of how do we perceive ourselves? Do we see ourselves as fixed entities, or do we believe that we can grow over time, right? And this is both true for ourselves and for our students, but it's also true for AI, which is, again, something not very many people talk about, but I think they should, right? So she has this quote in her book: becoming is better than being. And I totally agree, right? So for example, about yourself, right? If you say things like, oh, I'm good with languages, but I will never understand computer programming, that's an example of a fixed mindset, right? But if you say, well, if I mastered languages, I could easily master computer programming with practice, right? So that would be an example of growth mindset for yourself. It's the same for students, right? So Magda is, good with speaking, but she's not very good with assets. That's an example of a fixed mindset. A better, growth mindset would be like, well, if I gave more examples in practice, Magda would be both would be great with both, right? Okay, that's obvious. This like really old news here, right? But here's the interesting part, right? Is how can we use the growth mindset towards AI, right? So that instead of having like, ChatGPT generates only bad quality materials, it doesn't understand pedagogy, move from that to growth mindset. It's like, well, you know what? Maybe if I try this framework or this formula, or if I improve my prompting skills, or if I give it more examples, maybe AI would be able to create better output as well, right? So treat AI as a capable student with a growth mindset. So challenge for you here is experiment with different tools and see how with practice of these different tools, both you can improve and AI can improve. So adopt a growth mindset both towards yourself, your students, and AI. All right. So here's another one. Here's a cool term that I like. If you're a geek like me, you'll probably remember this one. So technopathy is basically could be defined as a skill of controlling machinery or tools with your mind, right? It's more of a sci-fi concept. So you're not going to see a lot of citations on this one in peer-reviewed studies. But you will see a lot of peer-reviewed studies on things like computational thinking, which is another way to say the exact same thing, right? And computational thinking is basically a process of formulating problems and solutions as a series of algorithms or steps that could be carried out. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because you are giving instructions to AI, and you need to think like AI so that it understands what you think, right? So a good way to do this is by starting with abstraction. So what am I trying to accomplish? How can I best explain this to AI? Then decompose it into steps. Okay, first, what steps would I follow to solve this type of problem? Or if I give this type of problem to a colleague of mine, what steps would they need to know? Then, what steps would AI need to follow to get the same result? And then instruction. What details would a human expert need to know so that I can give these details and include them in the prompt to AI so that AI generates it, right? So basically, technopathy, might sound like a very abstract, scientific, sci-fi concept, but in reality, it's a real skill that you can develop by breaking down problems into, clear understanding of what they are, decomposing them into steps, communicating those steps and instructions to the system, and you will be surprised how good the output of this system becomes. So, challenge number 9, think of a lesson prep task for your classroom that AI could help, and try to diagram what AI would need to do and in what order. Would it need to generate maybe keywords first, and then create a dialogue with those keywords, and then maybe highlight the keywords in bold, and then maybe create a multiple choice quiz for that dialogue, right? So like describe it in steps in which you would solve it, give these exact steps to AI, and see if it gets close to what you would have done. All right, good. Next point here is about using AI to cover all the basics. Now we're like really getting into the weeds of this stuff. So cover all the basics. I don't know if you've seen this quote or different versions of it. It basically says that all frameworks are wrong, but some are useful. So one of my favorite frameworks is Paul Nation's 4 Strands of a Language course. So when I studied curriculum design, I first learned about this framework, and I fell in love with it just because it's very simple. Maybe it's not the most comprehensive coverage of how languages are learned or should be taught, but for me, it was a very simple one. So I don't know if you've seen it before. If yes, you can comment in the chat. But basically, the 4 strands of a good language course should cover these 4 things, right? So meaning focused input, where learners have a lot of abundance of inputs like reading and listening, and the focus is on content through reading and listening. You have meaning focused output, where learners have a lot of opportunities to speak or write, to communicate ideas, not to demonstrate grammar or vocabulary, but to just express themselves in writing or speaking. Third strand is about language-focused learning, where you study vocabulary, you understand grammar rules, you practice pronunciation. And the last, most important, well, not most important, but I guess usually ignored aspect of language teaching is fluency development, right? Is where your students get to practice the same things over and over and over and over and over again, so that they develop this unconscious fluency where they can speak without thinking, right? So all these 4 strands. So why am I giving you this? I guess, in a webinar about AI is because AI can help you with all of these things, right? So if you use AI, make sure you use AI to cover all these 4 strands. Don't just focus on creating vocabulary lists or just grammar exercise, right? So don't use AI tools only where it's easy. Use AI where it's needed the most, right? So reflection here for you, maybe if you guys could answer this one in the chat, is which of these 4 strands do you think your classroom would benefit from the most? Is it meaning focus input? Is it creating activities for meaning focus output? Is it language learning, language focused learning, fluency development, or maybe it's all of the 4? So now let's go step by step with each one. So let's focus on meaning focused input, right? So listening and reading. How can AI help? So well, AI can help by creating both texts and tasks, right? So for text, I mean that it can generate listening passages and it can generate videos with AI. And then for reading, it can generate reading passages or summarize or simplify text for different student levels. But it can also help you generate tasks, right? You can generate activities to give students before listening, to activate schema or prior knowledge. You can generate activities to give students to do during listening, like graphic organizers or fill in the blank activities. And then you can generate activities for after listening. So for comprehension check, vocabulary work, grammar unpacking, and a bunch of others. And the same thing for reading, right? You can generate activities for before reading, during reading, and after, right? So again, it's a very simple framework. So if you are going to create something with AI, you can create both the content and the tasks to do with the content. All right, so challenge number 10, right? Use AI to create one listening passage, one reading passage, and then create at least one activity to do before, during, or after. If you've done this, you already will be on a good trajectory towards becoming an AI-ready ESL teacher by knowing how to use AI for meaning-focused input. Second is for output, right? So speaking and writing. AI can help you focus, create activities for both one-way and two-way communication. So I'm using this concept of one-way, two-way based on the work that we've done internally with the skills development framework for the global scale of English. And we basically looked at speaking and writing communication and noticed that some tasks are just like one way, like a presentation, and some of them are two-way, like an email exchange or chat or a conversation. So I think it's a simple framework, again, to adopt, right? So for one way, for speaking, you can generate speaking topics or speaking rubrics, and the same for writing. You can generate writing models or writing rubrics. For two-way, you create dialogues for students to practice or role-play scenarios. For writing, you can create email simulations or generate feedback for students' essays and so on. So challenge for you here, challenge number 11. I hope you're keeping track of all of them. I think this conversation is getting very, very challenging. So use AI to create 3 example essay models with words and grammar from the unit, for example, and see if it's any good. So we're going into using AI for language-focused learning, right? So we're talking about things like vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. There's so many things AI can do here, right? So for vocabulary, you can try to create word lists, flashcards, vocabulary games, examples of words used in context. Ask AI to create, I don't know, funny definitions of words, of academic words or whatever. For grammar, you can create grammar activities or explanations or examples of grammar in context. For pronunciation, you can create tongue twisters for specific phonemes. I don't know. When I was learning English, we used a lot of tongue twisters. As you can tell from my accent, they probably didn't work, but I think they're quite fun to use in the classroom anyway. So yeah, you can create pronunciation games or dialogues that have a specific phoneme that you want students to practice. So these are just some ideas. So challenge number 12 here is use AI to create maybe a funny dialogue that contains a target phoneme in every single word of that dialogue, and then have students role play. I'm sure it will get a good laugh, especially if it's a TH sound or something like this. But don't do a schwa, because it will probably come up with every word anyway. So next one is fluency development. So this one is the last and fourth strand of well-rounded program, right? So as we mentioned, fluency is automaticity, right? Is unconscious mastery. Is when students can speak without thinking, when they can speak without thinking like, oh, I need a subject, then a verb, then an object, then, like, so that's fluency, right? So according to Paul Nation, fluency, you can develop fluency using two approaches, right? Either a well-beaten path, where you ask students to repeat the same task over and over and over again. Like, for example, they practice the same dialogue, 15 times at increased speed. Here's this activity 432 or 431 or something like that, where like you have 4 minutes to do a dialogue, then you have 3 minutes to do the same dialogue, then you have 1 minute to do the same dialogue, right? So that's a well-beaten path. Or the richness path is where you create kind of versions of this task. They're slightly different, but it's almost similar or has the same exact words. So it feels like it's different, but it's the same exact thing. But students get to do it again. All right, so you know all of this, but how can AI help? Well, here's a good example, right? Remember the dialogue that I generated before with that RTF framework? So let's say I took that dialogue and I asked AI to say, okay, create 10 versions of these dialogues where students discuss different likes and dislikes to practice the same words and expressions, but the dialogues are different, characters are different, context is different, to just, drill these, let's say, lexicogrammatical chunks into students' unconscious, right? So then AI would create a whole bunch of these dialogues for me in just a matter of seconds, and then I can print them and use them in the classroom, right? Words are the same, grammar is the same, but dialogues are not the same. They're slightly different. All right, so challenge 13 here is use AI to create funny dialogues, maybe, that contain am I just going backwards here? Here we go. Well, I guess the challenge there would be use AI to create different versions of the same tasks so you can help students to develop fluency. All right, so we're going into the next area. So how you can take all of this and bring it to the next boss level challenge of using AI in the classroom to like really transform your teaching practice. All right, so transforming your classroom with AI. So this is a quote from Socrates, or at least I use ChatGPT to find quotes from Socrates to impress the audience in the webinar, and that's what ChatGPT gave me. So the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So I didn't fact check it, so you can fact check it for me. But if Socrates did say that, I think it's very relevant to this lesson. And the lesson is, SAMR could be a good, effective way to see, am I using AI just to replicate the old, or am I using AI to truly transform my classroom? So SAMR, if you're not familiar, is a useful framework created by Ruben Puentedura to help teachers decide how to effectively use technology in the classroom. What I'm doing with it is I'm taking inspiration from that framework and giving you ideas of how you can apply it specifically for AI, right? So basically, am I using AI to simply replicate the same old pedagogy, same old content, or am I using AI to teach in very new ways that were not possible with AI, right? So SAMR stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition, right? So substitution is where AI is used to create the same thing that was without AI. Augmentation is when AI allows you to slightly improve an activity or content with AI. Modification is where you improve it even further, and redefinition is where you take it to the whole other level and say, like, wow, with AI, I could actually create activities that were not even imaginable without it. So now let's go with each one of these one step at a time and see if it could be any useful. So let's start with substitution, right? So some texts or tasks, when we talk about like same texts or same tasks, but creating with AI. So instead of searching for like generic readings or images or like, listenings, I call them, or videos online, what you can try is generating custom readings, images, and listenings and videos with AI. Or instead of spending hours creating custom activities, games, and word lists, maybe you can spend minutes asking AI to do it for you with those prompts and frameworks that we discussed, right? But whatever you do at this level, remember, you're not actually improving the learning experience itself. All you're doing is you're just making you're substituting the same exact things with AI without really improving instruction. So challenge for you here, I think, is a good place to start. Try to see how some of the online text or tasks that you create yourself could be substituted by the ones created with AI, and see if that works. So second level is augmentation, right? So it's basically using AI to improve what already works. So if, for example, reading texts from 5 years ago no longer work, you can try to regenerate some readings based on recent events. Or if you have some vocabulary exercises that feel too generic for your classroom, maybe you can create custom vocabulary exercise based on what students struggled yesterday or last week. So all you can see here is basically that AI can take the whole concept of what really works, like these activities works, this text work, but with AI they could be much better, right? They can be more localized, simplified, made more difficult, maybe infused with some relevant events or something like that. So it could be that magic wand, right, that helps you personalize or localize your instruction. So that's a level of augmentation. So think of maybe an activity that you like, or maybe an essay model that you like, but that you think is a bit too old or topic is outdated, and try to substitute it with something that AI can create for you. So now we're going into the more interesting territory. So modifying instruction with AI, right? So you can take a more constructivist approach, right? I think constructivist approach is nothing new, right? It's basically treating the learners not as consumers or passive recipients of instructions, but treating them as creators and participants in the construction of knowledge, right? Where they're more actively engaged. AI can help you do that really well, right? So, for example, instead of just using AI yourself, you can come up with some activities where students use AI to learn. Maybe they generate text, maybe they generate vocabulary lists, and so on. So instead of seeing AI as a tool to cheat on the exam, maybe you can see AI as a tool that can assist students on the exam, knowing upfront that they will be using it. How would you modify the task of the exam then? Or treating learners in generally as active participants, right? So here's some examples that I would try in the classroom. So students can prompt AI to summarize a text, and then they can use a rubric that you provide to evaluate if the AI generated summary is good based on what they know about a good summary, right? So in this case, we're not asking them to summarize, but we're asking them to evaluate the summary. Sometimes it's relevant. Or we can ask AI to correct essay draft, and then ask students to write a reflection paper about what AI corrected for them and what they learned in the process, and what mistakes it corrected and why those were mistakes. That's an interesting reflection task, right? Or maybe students can generate funny dialogues with idioms, and then present them to the class, and then the class votes which ones were the funniest, for example. So a whole bunch of other things that you can try, right? But try to think, right, as the challenge. In your class, how can I ask students to use AI so that the activity that they do is creative and interesting and helps them use language in more constructive ways? So finally, right, I guess the epitome of SEMR is redefinition, right? So it's where we take it to the boss level of effectiveness. So I encourage you to think of how AI could be used to create activities or learning experiences that are authentic, constructive, collaborative, and practical, right? So, for example, for authentic, maybe students can use AI to create blogs or podcasts or web pages. I don't know if you've seen, but there are interesting AI tools online that allow you to generate a website just from a prompt, right? So you can say, create a web page about this and about that, and you can ask students to use one of those tools for their presentations at the end of the unit, for example. Or you can ask students to work on projects or portfolios, or publishing something online with the help of AI. I remember once with my advanced students, we worked on a group project where our textbook had 10 units in it. And what we did with the students, and we created the 11th unit of that textbook. So we analyzed how the textbook was structured, and then we used a whole bunch of media and so on. And every group presented an 11th unit based on the topic they liked. I think it's a very interesting use of AI. We didn't have AI back then, at least that was usable, but I think now it could be much faster. collaborative, right? So think about AI tools being used for pair work and group work, and then practical, right? So help students learn how to use AI so that the skills that they develop with this are useful not only in the classroom, but outside, right? So help them how to become effective users of AI for editing, brainstorming, evaluating, and things like this. All right, so challenge, this is the biggest one, right? So is create a completely new task that you've never done before because it was not possible without AI that will leverage AI to help students practice a language in a very new transformative way. I think this is a very interesting area to try as a teacher if you haven't explored any of these. All right, so we're getting into the end tips where the things are becoming more useful for you personally as an AI-proof language teacher. So how to become an AI-proof language teacher. So I don't know if you've seen online things like AI will not replace teachers, but teachers who use AI will replace teachers who don't use AI, or all teachers will eventually be AI teachers and things like that. I don't know if you're on Twitter or LinkedIn or other social media, but I see things like this going around all this time. But I think they're partially true. I think AI will become so widespread that eventually all of us will be using it for all these different tasks. And webinars like this would even feel weird. It's like why would anybody even want to know, because AI is already part of our life, right? But I guess a question to reflect here is, how would your life or career as a teacher be different if you were proficient with a variety of AI tools? What if you were super proficient with all those things that we discussed today? How would your teaching and how would your classroom already be different? So let's make it practical. So I don't know if you've heard about this concept about pedagogy. I like to pronounce it as pedagogy to emphasize the AI instead of A inside. But I first saw this term mentioned by Donald Clark, who wrote some of his books that you see on the left. So he coined this term to describe the fact that pedagogy in the age of AI is very different, right? So as you remember with Sammer, when we redefine our instruction with the help of AI, it gets very interesting, right? So he references to applications of AI for teaching and learning as pedagogy. So how can you go through it and why it's important, right? So typically, the cycle that we need to break and is not replicating the same old stuff with new technology, because usually the way it works is we say, okay, what is possible with technology today? And then we teach based on what's possible. And then this determines how we teach in the end, right? So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that the tools we use determine how we teach, and then we teach and create new tools so we can teach again the way that we taught, right? So I think we need to break the cycle with AI. With the cycle of AI, we need to start with what is now possible with AI that removes the previous constraints of the past decade that are no longer true. How can we teach if those constraints no longer exist? And if they no longer exist, what new tools can we create that can help us teach us in the new way? And then the way that we teach in that new way could be called the pedagogy or pedagogy. I don't know, whichever way you want to pronounce. But the concept is don't get fixated on technology, but also don't get fixated on how teaching used to happen. There's a lot of opportunity to really reimagine instruction here. So a challenge here is more of a philosophical one. So list 3 limiting beliefs about teaching that you believed to be true because that's what was possible before, that are no longer true in the age of AI. And then let go of those beliefs. So second point here is we can use AI to create formative assessments, right? So assessments typically could be divided into assessments of learning, which is summative, where the end result of that is just a score, like you failed or you succeeded or your GSC 75, right? Or you can focus on assessments for learning, right? Which is formative, right? And the result of that is suggestions of what you should do next, right? So now those suggestions could be from the teacher to the student, in which case the student learns, or it could be from student to the teacher, in which case the teacher learns how to do their job better or what is working or not. So I'm really encouraging you to, if you're exploring AI, to really focus on this formative piece, right? So think about how as a teacher, you can use AI to continuously provide more and more useful information to the student and more information to yourself about what works for you, what works for them, what they should do next, right? So I'm stealing this from John Hattie, who, among other books, wrote this book, 10 Mind Frames for Visible Learning. He did a lot of research on what are the things that really impact learning. And he basically said these attitudes of helping students understand feedback, getting feedback from students to you on your teaching, and then seeing assessments as information to you about the quality of your instruction is very helpful. So challenge 19, and we're 2 challenges away from the last one, is try different ways to create formative assessments and feedback to improve your impact as an English teacher. So we're getting closer, and I'll give you a couple of other practical tips here. So what you can use AI for specifically. One thing I tried over the weekend is I tried to create a custom GPT. So a custom GPT is basically a small version of ChatGPT for a specific task. And what I created is this rubric generator, or rubric creator that I called it. And the whole purpose of this custom GPT is to help me create formative assessment rubrics for speaking and for writing. So as input, I give information about my learners, what I want to assess with the rubric, and what is important to assess. And what it gives me in return, it gives me a rubric with points for different constructs within that task, right? So if it's a presentation, it will evaluate vocabulary, a specific use of grammar, content, pronunciation, and it will give me points, right? And it writes all of these descriptions of performance that I can double check if I like them. And if I like them, I can print them and then use them for formative instruction, right? So challenge for you here, maybe try to create a rubric or create your own custom GPT to see if your GPT can create like really quality assessments there. And you can do the same for writing, right? So I took the same GPT, asked it to describe a written task, and now it created a rubric to evaluate like a writing task for me, right? So now here it focuses on formatting, syntax, spelling, punctuation, clarity, and things like that. So I think it's pretty cool of what AI can do. And you can try as your challenge 20, create a custom GPT that creates either rubrics for you or some other formative approaches. So we are in the last territory here. And this is where the ball is in your court and where you decide what will be the next first step for you on your journey as an AI ESL teacher or English teacher, right? So let's basically bring it home and connect all the dots here. So we spoke about a lot of different things. Foundations of AI, we spoke about 4 strands for rounded instruction. We spoke about SAMR for really taking your instruction to the next level. And we spoke about formative assessments of how they can be used. So what I did here is I took inspiration from UNESCO, who are working on an AI competency framework for teachers. And I like how they're thinking about organizing a rubric. And I thought, well, what if we created a similar version of that rubric, but for English teachers specifically? So I just want to show it to you. It's the first draft. It's not scientific. It's more of my way of conceptual thinking of, as a teacher, how would I evaluate? Am I a good AI-proof English teacher, right? So first, right? So here's the rubric that AI helped me generate. So you can be a rookie AI teacher in terms of knowledge and concepts, right? So where you understand some basics of AI. And if you're an expert, you have a very advanced understanding of concepts of predictive AI, generative AI, and other methods and how AI is trained. So this is something that you can evaluate yourself and decide what you can do to level up. So second layer of this rubric is how well-rounded is your use of AI, right? So remember Paul Nation's 4 strands, right? As a rookie teacher, maybe you're using AI for only one strand, like vocabulary or grammar. And maybe as an expert teacher, you have a clear, well-rounded approach to using AI to cover both input, output, language work, and fluency development work. Same applies for SAMR, right? Remember, we looked at different 4 levels of SAMR. Maybe as a teacher, you start with just using AI for substituting the same things with AI, but gradually over time, you move to transforming your classroom with activities where AI allows you to teach in ways that were previously unimaginable. And the same applies for pedagogy, right? Or pedagogy, where we basically look at moving away from just teaching in the same old ways, but with AI, to reimagining our pedagogy and starting with like how can we teach with AI that wasn't possible without it before? And then finally, assessment for learning, right? So as a rookie teacher, you may be trying to generate some tests with AI or quizzes, but maybe you move towards becoming an expert and generating really formative assessments that help you understand how good you are at teaching and help students understand where they struggle and what they should do next. So, and I think with this one, we wrap it up with our final challenge, challenge 21. So complete challenges 1 through 20, and you will become an AI expert English teacher. And I really encourage you to go back to this video once it's available next week and go through all of these challenges. And I guarantee you will take your instruction to the next level. And with this, I want to thank you for your attention.